Well, hello there, and welcome to day 71 of A Film a Day with me, Jordan Woodley. Today covering the Steven Spielberg war classic, Empire of the Sun. The war film is quite a tricky one to really look at. I don't know if I like the genre as a whole. I think it's very much a case-by-case basis. There are some that I just struggle through. I do want to re-examine Saving Private Ryan, but I've remembered not enjoying that quite on the occasions that I've tried to watch it. I just find the setting quite a difficult one to engage with. However, something like Empire of the Sun, what I really appreciate about it is that it examines the World War II setting, but from a perspective that you don't often get. This, of course, is in the you could say started the tradition, or at least was one of the early proponents of perceiving a huge global event like the Second World War from the perspective of a child. I mean, later we of course have things like Boy with the Striped Pajamas, Jojo Rabbit, The Book Thief, but I didn't realise that this was very much in that mould of a child trying to process and understand the immense, difficult, challenging event of World War II from the perspective of people who were living in not in British sort of expatriate China. There is something funny about that, really, sort of as a starting point, and I think as an arc for Christian Bale's character, it's quite interesting to create an environment for a child like this. I get vibes of something like The Secret Garden, where you get a child who's based in this cultured foreign land that's nothing like the traditional British culture, but the way it's been filtered for them and structured, and because they're in this sort of, like I say, expat territory thing, you just get this sense that they're only really getting this sort of British filtered version, and so they're not. They get a almost distorted window perspective of the world around them, and it's such an interesting place to start your character because there's very little connection he has to the world around him. We know he loves planes, and he has this sort of idealized, upper middle lifestyle. Of course, his parents being wealthy and connected. He goes to sort of he gets to visit the club and meet all of the be around all these wealthy English waspy men. And so you start the film really not feeling the fact that this is set in China, the fact that this is set during the war. There's like a disconnect, a disassociation, very much an expat mentality presented that things like war don't really affect them. They're far removed from it, and any Chinese culture that is around them is really someone that they control and set, and even having a Chinese person in their country club is exotic and an unusual event. But the beauty of it being Christian Bale as a child, he's supposed to only be somewhere around the age of like 8 or 9, means that as events escalate, you really see him adapt, and he goes through the arc of pompous rich child who's rude to staff and thinks he understands what's going on around him. He wants to join the Japanese air fleet, even though of course Japan is opposition to Britain, but to him it doesn't matter. He just wants to fly planes, and there's an innocence and a naivety to him, but also there's something just disconnected, just completely ambivalent, and that really reflected in his father's character as well, who also has this ambivalence. And then, of course, the war reaches them, and he is separated, and his character goes through such a difficult journey. I really like the scenes just after he's been separated from his mother and father, when he's walking. He's gone back to his house to wait for them, and he's walking around this empty mansion, and it has this real, almost gothic aesthetic to it, like it's being haunted. And then you have people, Japanese soldiers who are looting it, and there's something both haunting and yet violating about the fact that this house, this mansion, is empty except for this young boy and looters, and that has such atmosphere to it, and really breaks that initial act. It really indicates that what we've seen has been left behind, and now we're going to see a very different world through the eyes of this young boy. And so we do experience that. We experience his homelessness, or whatever the reverse of homelessness is, in terms of he has a home but he's the only one in it, and him trying to survive and get food, and meeting John Malkovich, who... John Malkovich is an extraordinary actor, and I'm looking forward to seeing more in his... I mean, I've seen many films in his filmography, but I just look forward to really going back to some of the classics. Very much like with Christopher Walken, back when I was watching The Deer Hunter and seeing them doing things that are really both inside their strengths, but also very boundary pushing for them experimenting with acting. But as I say, John Malkovich is just wonderful here, and him and Christian Bale they just have such a good chemistry. And as I say, it develops as the narrative goes. They go into a internment camp, a work camp, and you see this boy adapt. And what I think, and there are just some beautiful moments. There's this shot where he sees these pilots, and there's just something about the way it's framed. And again, this is another marker for a change in the narrative, and there are some major changes following this, but you see a difference in him, and you see the landscape change around him, and you start to see him, once this shot of him seeing these pilots, his pilots seeing him, and him almost being overwhelmed by his experience, this sort of transformation. After that, as I say, it's very much he's now in the society, and you see him relating to different people in a very different way. He's lost the pompous, self-important arrogance, and he becomes this really textured character, and there's just some powerful scenes with him. And like I say, I mean, Steven Spielberg, far be it from me to ever sort of question, but or even need to comment on, but the cinematography in this is just phenomenal. The shots of planes, the shots of the Chinese landscape. It is a series of beautiful paintings, and each different section of the film, from like I say, the haunting empty mansion on from that, and has this wonderful look to it. I don't know if it's Steven Spielberg's best, from my perspective. I will confess, so this is my big confession. Everyone has a universally beloved film that they hate, and they probably have a film they love that is universally hated. In terms of the film that I cannot get on with, and it is universally loved, and here we go, is E.T. I just don't get it. It doesn't do anything for me. I've watched it several times throughout childhood and adulthood, and I just don't relate to it. It's just not for me. And this is... but what I will say about Spielberg is he does understand children, and he does understand how to direct for children in a way that makes them feel like children, but also doesn't prevent an audience member from connecting with them. That it allows audience to tap into their inner child, so you get that in E.T. and Hook, and here you get that. You really understand this boy's journey, and you really connect to him. For me, I've always been much more into Spielberg's the other side of his career, his much more adult films. I love Bridge of Spies. I think Bridge of Spies is a phenomenal film. And I do want to go back and watch things like... I do want to give Saving Private Ryan a re-evaluation, and I do want to go and watch Munich and really sort of tap into the adult Steven Spielberg work. But what I think Empire of the Sun really does is it really marries the two together. It has the wonderment of a child, like with those kinds of films like E.T. and Hook, where it's a child's... the early scenes have this almost magical quality to them when in his innocence, that feels like he loves the wonderment of the world around him, but even, as I say, disconnected from it. But what it then does is it shows you the brutality, and it shows you the harshness of war and of just what the world was like at that time, and what it means to struggle and to be around other people that struggle, and people who aren't bad people, but they're desperate and they will do bad things. And there is this scene, and this is very close to the end, so I won't go into too much detail, but there is this scene where he stood on top of a building, and it's initially him by himself, and then him with another character, and it is genuinely one of the best scenes I've seen in film. It's so powerful and beautiful and so well performed, and it's shot wonderfully, and it looks phenomenal. And Christian Bale, this is a young Christian Bale. This is second feature film ever, 13-year-old Christian Bale. And honestly, you can see why he became this huge movie star that worked ever since. Because he does so much, and the journey you see from the innocent child through to the child you see at the top of that roof is so powerful that I am genuinely astounded by his ability as a performer to have done that. So that is genuinely amazing. As I say, this is very much in that ilk of things like Boy in the Striped Pyjama and Jojo Rabbit. I still think I prefer those. Boy in the Striped Pyjama is definitely in the category of film that I have loved. I thought was phenomenal. I think it's a perfect film. Never going to watch it again. Never going to watch it again if I can avoid it, because it's too much. I think Jojo Rabbit is just a genuinely phenomenal film. Empire of the Sun almost reaches there. I do think there are issues with it. I think the tone sometimes struggles. As I say, Spielberg is trying to marry the two sides of his filmmaking ability, the childlike wonderment with the desperate war, and I think there are moments where he misjudges it. There's a sequence partway through where there's... And it's not entirely on him because it's John Williams' score, but obviously he would have made the decision. And the music used is just the wrong tone. It's just not quite there. And I think it's things like that where it slightly misjudges the tone. I also think it's a very long film, and I wonder if it could have been shorter, because I do think there are very protracted scenes. I think it earns it because it needs to get the character and the audience to have gone on this journey with the character. But there are scenes and sequences where you think, oh, this has gone on a long time. There's a scene where he goes through a fence and is walking along this area, and that scene is good and tense, but it goes on a while. I don't know, but as I say, I loved it. I just think Jojo Rabbit does that child experience of horror and World War II
centric horror just that little bit better, and so does Boy in the Striped Pajamas, I think. But yeah, I was very impressed with this, and I shouldn't have been surprised because it's Steven Spielberg, and it's not one of his, it's not one of the ones which are hailed as terrible. But the fact that I've not heard it mentioned much is a shame, because I think this is up there for him, really is, and I found the experience quite cathartic. Anyway, you can, if you could, please do like this video and subscribe to the channel, A Film a Day. Maybe hit that bell so you can get notifications when new videos are uploaded. There's a new video every day, as you can imagine. If you could share the videos and go back through my back catalogue through other films that I have discussed, that would also be wonderful. And if you could follow me on Twitter at Jordan_Woodley. Thanks for joining me. Take care.